It's no secret that X-Men 97 is a huge success. What I consider to be one of the best Marvel shows has definitely been making some pretty big noise lately. We know that we're getting future seasons of the show, but one topic that has been running rampant is the possibility of a continuation to Spider-Man the Animated Series in the form of a Spider-Man 98 show. I don't know if this is that likely to happen, since we are getting a new Spider-Man animated show later this year, but who's to say Marvel can't have two running at the same time? While I am excited for your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, most fans would rather see Spider-Man 98, and I think Marvel knows that. Even if it doesn't happen, it's still fun to give our ideas on where we would go with things if we got to handle a continuation. If you don't know what happens in Spider-Man the Animated Series, specifically the ending, I would recommend checking out a recap or something because this video would probably be pretty confusing otherwise. This is my pitch for Season 1 of Spider-Man 98. Episode 1 would be titled Ends of the Earth. It would begin right where Spider-Man the Animated Series left off, with Peter and Madam Web journeying off to find MJ. The episode would end up with them eventually finding her within Limbo, but before they can escape, they come across the Green Goblin, who is also trapped in Limbo with Mary Jane. Spider-Man and Madam Web fight off Green Goblin and eventually escape to safety, but we see that Norman also secretly escaped with them. At the end of the episode, MJ finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. At first, they're happy to be back together, but then they realize that after all the trauma they've been through, they both need a bit of time to themselves. Especially since Peter doesn't want his close relation to her causing her to be put in more dangerous situations like this. In Episode 2, The Elementals Part 1, Peter attempts to get his life back on track after Secret Wars and fighting against Spider Carnage. He gets a job at Midtown High School and begins to work there as a science teacher. Everything's going fine until two new supervillains show up, Sandman and Molten Man. Spider-Man fights the two villains, and the entire time he notices that it seems less like they want to kill him, and more like they're trying to lead him somewhere. Meanwhile, we catch up with Harry Osborn and learn that he's preparing to get married to Liz Allen. While Harry prepares for the wedding, he's stalked by Norman Osborn, who's been trying to keep a low profile ever since he escaped from Limbo. Sandman and Molten Man eventually lead Spider-Man to an abandoned dock, where he's shocked to find Hydro Man waiting for him. In Episode 3, The Elementals Part 2, Peter angrily fights Hydro Man, feeling like it's his fault that MJ was replaced with a water clone, and all the other bad things that came from that event. Morris Bench tries to get through to Peter, but when he doesn't listen, he's forced to team up with Sandman and Molten Man to fight him. Eventually, Peter is subdued and forced to hear Morris out. Hydro Man tells him that MJ's clone was the result of a man named Miles Warren, and that Warren isn't done with his whole cloning scheme. Morris tells Peter all about how Warren found a piece of Peter's suit, and is using the DNA to make clones of Spider-Man. He says that he knew he needed to help Peter, and sent two people like him, Sandman and Molten Man, to help get his attention and warn him about Warren. Peter says that none of this makes sense. Why would Hydro Man care about helping him? And how does he even know all of this? Morris doesn't answer any of Peter's questions. Instead, he leads him in the direction of Miles Warren's lab, and says that Peter can either take his advice and stop the cloning, or risk facing the consequences. Peter decides to listen to Hydro Man just in case, and heads off towards Warren's lab. Meanwhile, Norman reveals himself to Harry, causing Harry to become shocked and have a panic attack. Norman tells his son that he can either return to his side, or watch his entire world burn, before leaving to give him time to think. Spider-Man enters Miles Warren's base, but instead of a normal scientist, Peter is greeted by a green animalistic creature. The creature reveals itself as Miles Warren, or as he now calls himself, the Jackal. The Jackal captures Spider-Man and restrains him, telling him that he spent forever attempting to clone him, even performing experiments on himself in order to learn how to successfully do it, resulting in his new appearance. The Jackal says that he learned Peter's true identity through the DNA sample, but he still needed more DNA to finish the cloning process. Warren found Hydra Man and forced him and his band of elementals to find Peter and send him to the lab, in order to retrieve the rest of his DNA. The Jackal takes everything he needs and proceeds to finish the creation process of the Spider-Man clone, resulting in the birth of Ben Reilly. Peter frees himself from his restraints and tries to ration with his clone as he attacks him. Peter recognizes Ben Reilly from his time fighting Spider Carnage and is able to get through to him, turning him to his side. Peter and Ben Reilly escape the Jackal's laboratory and find refuge at Peter's house. Peter talks to Ben some more, forming a brotherly bond with him, before making him his own sensational Spider-Man suit. Meanwhile, we catch up with Aunt May, learning that she's been volunteering at the Feast homeless shelter and is in a romantic relationship with its founder, Martin Lee. Peter and Ben face off against the Jackal once more, defeating him. Ben then decides that he wants to go away for a bit and discover his true identity. At the end of the episode, Peter gets an invitation to Liz and Harry's wedding. All kinds of old characters from the original show reunite at Liz and Harry's wedding, including Peter and MJ, who spend a lot of the episode talking about what's been going on. Before Harry and Liz can be pronounced husband and wife, the Green Goblin appears out of nowhere and attacks, turning the wedding into a massacre, kinda like this show's smaller scale version of the attack on Genosha events in X-Men 97. There are a few big deaths, and Green Goblin attempts to take Harry with him to join his side. Peter, MJ, and most importantly Liz all try to get through to Harry, telling him to fight against his father. Harry listens and uses a snapped wooden plank to rebound a pumpkin bomb that his father throws back towards him, injuring the Green Goblin and allowing everyone to escape. They all mourn everyone who died, and Peter is both shocked and horrified by Green Goblin's reappearance, wondering what he wants. In Episode 7, Sphere of Influence, we're reintroduced to Kingpin, who's currently in a turf war with another crime boss known as Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative wants Kingpin's power and influence, using everything and everyone he has control over to wage war against Wilson Fisk. While trying to find signs of the Green Goblin, Peter comes across Daredevil, who's trying to put an end to the war. Spider-Man and Daredevil work together to fight Kingpin and Mr. Negative, and eventually, Mr. Negative is revealed to be Martin Lee. Towards the end of the episode, after the whole wedding incident, Peter and MJ realize that their time apart hasn't done them any favors, and they need each other, officially getting back together. The episode ends with Kingpin finding out about Martin Lee's relationship with May Parker, and sending a hitman to kill her in order to send Mr. Negative a message. Peter arrives back home to see Aunt May lying on the floor in a pool of blood. Episode 8 begins with Peter rushing Aunt May to the nearest hospital as fast as possible, praying that she survives. May regains consciousness, but the doctors say that her survival is highly unlikely. This entire episode would just be a conversation between Peter and May, with Aunt May revealing that she's known Peter as Spider-Man for quite a while. At the end, Aunt May passes away, and Peter is devastated. Peter sits on the roof above the hospital, heartbroken. That's when he's approached by the Green Goblin, who reveals that he put all this into motion. He was the one who initiated the gang war between Mr. Negative and Kingpin behind the scenes, in order to gain control over both of their properties while they were distracted. But that wasn't his main goal. Even the wedding attack wasn't just to take Harry. He's been doing all of this because he wants to make Peter's life a living hell. Spider-Man attempts to fight the Green Goblin, but he gets away before Peter can land too many punches, taunting him and telling him that he's not done yet. In the finale, Peter explains everything to Daredevil and vows vengeance for Aunt May's death. Spider-Man, Daredevil, and Scarlet Spider team up with help from Harry Osborn and MJ to fight Green Goblin, Kingpin, and Mr. Negative. The three villains all meet in a desolate location, each one of them trying to kill the other two. The three heroes, along with Harry Osborn, arrive and fight them off. Peter doesn't pull his punches, especially against Green Goblin and Kingpin. Peter is even about to kill Kingpin before Daredevil stops him. In the end, the heroes are all beaten, and Green Goblin prepares to kill them. Not having any other choice, Harry is forced to somehow kill his father, putting an end to the Green Goblin for good. Mr. Negative is taken into custody and Kingpin gets away, with Peter vowing to find him and take revenge one day. MJ consoles Peter, and tells him that they'll get through this together. In the credits scene, we see another one of the dimensional rifts opening up, as Venom and Carnage walk out. Those are some of my thoughts on how I'd handle Spider-Man 98. If you ask me a week from now, my ideas will probably completely change, so none of this really matters. If this performs well though, and y'all like it enough, I might make more seasons since I do have some plans for where this show would go from here. So if that's something you would like to see, let me know in the comments. We're also incredibly close to 2K subs, so if you want to help out with that, I would really appreciate it. That's it, I'm done.